I am performing photosynthesis. I get all my nutrients from the sun. I don't need material sustenance. I get all my vitamin D from nature's tanning salon. Oh, is that my new car? Let me go investigate. Wait, no, let me walk backwards a little. Okay, now I'm walking forward. Could it be? It's a 2002 Toyota Camry LE. These are legendary. It saves on gas, and since my knowledge of environmental concerns ends there, I assume it's great for the planet. I can't wait to slap a coexist bumper sticker on this bad boy. I'm so horny for the environment. Mother Nature is my favorite Brazzers model. Yeah. We don't need no rubber to meet this road. Yeah. Oh, it tastes like grape nuts and a healthy work-life balance. Brian's gonna take over for a bit. But first, a word from our Brian.
Giveaway for this eternally youthful, entertaining, and fun, and hugely desirable Skyline ends this Wednesday. Click on the link in the description and go to go.getentertowin.com/regularcars. Buy a mug or a digital download, and you could be the person who gets to own their very own Skyline. I've never driven a car that gets noticed this much when I'm just using it for errands. And you could too. And thank you for helping support Regular Car Reviews. These giveaways are putting both of us on a plane to Australia next year, where I can't wait to continue this show for a very special season, driving cars that we never got in the United States. Click on the link in the description or go to go.getentertowin.com, buy a mug or a digital download, and get entered to win this beautiful Skyline. In this year of our Lord, 2023, I hear your complaints that buying a new car is unreachable. New houses are unreachable. And while I see solutions, I do recognize the ego-stroking pleasure that comes from tying yourself down to the railroad tracks and reenacting your own perils of Pauline to farm engagement on whichever social platform you find validating. But there is a solution to your woes, and it's the Toyota Camry from the early 2000s. Some people don't like this one because it's not the 90s one, and I recognize your complaints. The glass headlights have gone away in favor of plastic ones which need to be polished or replaced as the ages of UV light descend down on them, yellowing them. You don't like the paint because it's evocative of your church's detention room, because in this vision I've made for myself, even your church has detention. This is a car for a math teacher. The type that gives you homework on the first day of school and the second to last day of school. But Toyota in the early 2000s was still just as angry and pissed off as it was in the 80s. But by the early 2000s, they had become king. But they never let up. Toyota was Alexander the Great, still pushing, still pissed off, still ambitious, still hopeful. We're going to be the best. Like the cake song we all know and love, the sun has gone down, the moon has come up. Long ago somebody left with the cup, but there's still one man. The fans get up and they get out of town. The arena is empty except for one man still driving and striving as fast as he can. There's no technology in this car to sell. There's no gimmicks. There's no styling. There's no sexiness or emotion. The only thing that sold Camrys in the 2000s was your own fingertips and the dick-hardening reassurance that this car will not break. The myths of Toyota's fastidiousness to their own build quality are so ridiculous, I don't even believe half of them. But what I've heard is that when they got pallets of parts from their supplier, if one part out of the whole pallet of parts was defective, they would send them all back. Do it again, do it right. Who do you think we are, Mitsubishi? What do you think, we're building Tauruses here? Yeah, I'm gonna need you to get on your knees and Taurus D's nuts. We're Toyota. We ain't f***ing around. The quality of the metals. The quality of the metals. Everything fits perfectly. You will not find any part better than OEM on this. This Camry is 21 years old in 2023, and it drives better than my 2022 Kia Niro electric car. It feels better. It's more solid. There is no squeaks. There is no hesitation. Nothing is half-assed. You don't believe me, do you? Well, when you drive a car from this era, it's like Morty experiencing true level. And in these uncertain times of 2023, you need something that is certain. You need a companion that's going to survive. The transmission shifts on time, each time. First gear, really low. Punch it, get out of there. Second gear, a little bit less, now we're on the way. Third and fourth, way high. Those are your mileage gears. Yeah, there's an overdrive lockout button down there, but you're really not going to need it. The kickdown works fine. This isn't the sort of car for making moves. You don't need to make moves when you're in a Camry, because you already made them. You have the whole route planned out. You're like RZA with the 5-year plan. Forget the 5-year plan. You're seeing a decade ahead when you drive this. This is a 20-year-old car, and it's going to go for another 20 years. Toyota was just out to stick it to every other manufacturer. And as long as you change the oil and do the required maintenance, this car will keep you in the black. When Dave Ramsey and Caleb Hammer talk about cars, and I'd love to be on Caleb Hammer's show, they try to dance around it because they're good people, they're just not car people. But this, if you're looking to stay in the black, this is the car you should be driving. This takes your car out of the equation. I'm in college. What car should I buy? Camry. Corolla or Camry? Honestly, when you talk about fiscal responsibility, a Corolla from 2002 with 126,000 miles on it is going to be about $2,000 more than this Camry. But why? Well, people say, oh, I need a small fuel-efficient car. And is $2,000 really worth 2 more miles per gallon? No. You're going to have to drive the car for 40 years to see that return. How about you use that $2,000 to go to the gym and drop 20 pounds off? I know that's a Jay Leno line, but that'll help your car's mileage more than buying a Corolla will.
Okay, I got a Camry. It's finally been done. And, that skit at the beginning, well, it's old feelings bubbling to the surface, I guess. This is what I imagined Camry drivers were like. So proud of minimalism that it became its own grandiose form of expression. I drive a car so plain that it makes me a more interesting person in comparison. But maybe that was just me projecting. Maybe that's what I was doing with Betty, trying to seem interesting with a car that, in a very bizarre way, seemed to sort of fit me. Well, it was time to let her go. Ride in peace, Betty. I'm so happy you're going to a good home, to good people who are excited to whip you back into fighting shape, that you're going to help someone the way you've helped me. We had a lot of fun, you and me, but it's time to be responsible, right? So I asked Brian, I asked him, what's a car that's going to give me no trouble, or at least as little trouble as possible? What car is going to keep me out of the shop? What's going to keep me from drowning in repair bills? I trust Brian, so when he said Toyota Camry, I began my search for literally nothing else. Okay, maybe I looked at a Honda Accord, maybe a Civic or two, maybe a RAV4 here or there, maybe a Highlander even, and yes, a Corolla too. But I was firmly entrenched on Team Camry. And over time, a Camry just started to make sense, although I would be lying if I said the smooth tones of John Davis's Motor Week review didn't do some of the heavy lifting. The man could talk me into oncoming traffic, what can I say? And so when we found this one, and the price was well below what I would have expected to pay for a car in this condition and with this mileage, I considered myself lucky. No, I considered myself blessed, because the good Lord put me in a position where something like this was even possible. He gave me a job like RCR, and a friend like Brian, a boss who has always been 100% fair and oftentimes outright generous in all our dealings. Hell, he did a fundraising live stream on the second channel that I wasn't expecting and didn't even know about, but felt humbled by all the same because it's not something I ever would have asked for anyone to do on my behalf. And yet those who donated and watched our shows made this possible, and for that, I sincerely thank you. Because you guys keep this thing running, but you're also more than just numbers in an algorithm. RCR fans really are some of the kindest people I've ever met in my life, and there will never be a day I don't feel blessed to have met so many. All this is to say, let me introduce you to Estelle. Yes, I named her Estelle after Golden Girl Estelle Getty, following off of the naming convention that each car I own shares a name with a Golden Girls actress, because the Golden Girls remains to this day one of America's finest contributions to pop culture, and I'll ride that pony into the ground. And hey, she's kind of golden, I guess. And she also kind of looks like an Estelle. I'm in that red Betty to gold Getty pipeline, you know? Okay, look, I'm not exactly married to the idea for future cars, but for now it has a certain ceremonial warmth. So give me a break. For all I know, I'll call the next car Scotty Thrillmer. Who knows? Now, what Estelle lacks in style and technological refinement, she more than makes up for in comfort and fuel economy. And space, because let's be real, this is far roomier than an SN95 Mustang. Maybe it's not as powerful, but who needs power? I'm not Tim the Toolman Taylor. This runs on a 2.4-liter 2AZ-FE inline-4 engine, making 157 horsepower at 5,600 RPM and 162 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. And frankly, that's good enough for me. Yeah, it's a reduction from the 190 horsepower and 220 pound-feet I was getting with Betty, but I don't think I've ever been someone who cares about power or speed, because I'm basically the most boring Puerto Rican on Earth. I can't speak for other galaxies, of course, but I also can't speak Spanish. Not that well anyway, so it tracks. This Camry is front-wheel drive, and yes, it's automatic, whatever, who cares? I live for irony. And it's the first year of the 5th generation model, one of the finest ever produced. But if I'm honest, I'm just glad I get better gas mileage, 24 city and 33 highway on an 18.5 gallon tank versus the 21 city and 27 highway on a 15.5 gallon tank I got with Betty. I was driving this thing for the better part of 10 days before I even had to fill her up, so the improvement didn't go unnoticed. The gas savings alone are a difference maker. And I didn't even have to be without my Bluetooth creature comforts either, since Brian gave me a plug-in Bluetooth connector so I wouldn't have to do the thing I did in the early days before I bought a new head unit for Betty and just place my phone in a plastic cup to amplify the sound because aux cords didn't work in the Mustang for whatever reason. This has literally everything I was looking for. This car was everything I was looking for. And more than I ever hoped it could be. So, why am I miserable? Well, understanding rarely happens without injury. And it's with this knowledge that I came to understand that driving a V6 Mustang that needed more work than a first draft term paper from the class clown was not sustainable. Even as I wanted to drive her until she literally stopped running. But I just couldn't make it work anymore, so now I drive a car I've lost in the parking lot no fewer than 7 times in the 3 weeks I've owned her. The last time, I legitimately considered the possibility somebody had stolen my car. But you can't really call the police because then they think you're involved. I call it the Dateline contradiction. Because any episode of Dateline or any other true crime show, they're going to interview a detective and he's going to say, well, the husband was the prime suspect because he didn't cry enough. If you lost the love of your life, you'd show way more emotion than this guy did, but he was like a stone. Then you'll see a different episode weeks later where a detective will go, yeah, we zeroed in on the wife. She was crying way too much. When you lose the love of your life, you don't go so over the top like that. It was obvious to us that she was performing. For law enforcement, there's only one proper way to grieve, and they have no idea what it is. Oh yeah, cars. Toyota Camry. I can't wait to post this to r/frugal. So why am I miserable? Well, maybe miserable is too strong a word, but understanding rarely happens without injury. And so the injury of having to let Betty go brought me to the understanding that maybe cars aren't things you get and then they're just yours, but rather things you get and then grow into. The Camry is a good car. A great car, even, but it doesn't really feel like it fits me yet. Then again, maybe my car was never meant to be an extension of me. A volunteer for one of our recent shoots, I want to say it was the Volvo C40 Recharge, he said something I'll never forget, something germane to this whole 9-month saga to get a new car. He said, "You guys, your videos make the point that cars are an extension of our personality, but I've always thought cars are more of a representation of what we'd want in an ideal partner." And I thought the dude was a literal genius in that moment because when you think about it, it's so true. And especially with this Camry, you see, this was owned by an old man who sold this Camry so he could get a RAV4 from around this same era because his late wife had owned one just like it. I suppose it was his way of trying to connect with her again, to find that perfect partner embodied in a car. Everything is symbolic in a way, but something being symbolic and deeply meaningful is in no way mutually exclusive. My Mustang was what I thought I'd have wanted in a partner in my late 20s and early 30s. It was cool to me, attractive to me, dangerous to others, and possessing endless patience for my clumsiness and inexperience. But the Camry is basically that ideal partner for where I'm at now. I want consistency, reliability. I don't want surprises or new sounds whose sources I can't locate. More than something I can grow to love, I want something I can count on. I had my fun. I want to be bored because boredom is beautiful. To be so entirely untroubled as to feel a general sense of wandering apathy? Sign me up, dude. I'll take boredom over sadness, anxiety, dread, guilt, inadequacy, or loneliness any day of the week. Toyota Camry. The official car of community college students on their last handful of late drop credits. Because you can't have a successful relationship, a part-time job, and a spot on the dean's list. You're gonna have to make a choice. Toyota Camry, the official car of grandkids. The ones who inherited this when Grandpa got his license revoked and his own children wanted nothing to do with it. The ones with delusions of getting a new car on the day this Camry finally dies, only for them to pass this Camry down to their own children, because that day never came. Toyota Camry. Yo, let's get inside the Buffalo Wild Wings before the Eagles game starts. Aw, a Toyota Camry. Good on them for getting a designated driver. Toyota Camry. For when your favorite people are the ones who cancel plans at the last minute so you can just stay home. Honestly, this Camry is everything I could have possibly asked for. It's mechanically and technically unchallenging for the boomer mindset I apparently just discovered I have. And I mean, I hate the anti-theft alarm that the old guy who owned this before me had installed. It's an aftermarket part and it basically just flips out all the time. You see, let me explain. I didn't have a key fob for Betty after the first year because the wiring went whack. So when I opened the car to leave, I would immediately hit the lock button on the door so I wouldn't forget. And I started doing that in this Camry out of force of habit. And no sooner does the door close than I get a sound like the panic alarm a Midwest dad always dreamed of getting installed on his thermostat. Then it freaked out when I opened the trunk manually with the key because, again, I wasn't used to having a working fob, so I fell into old habits. It didn't like that I closed the trunk without hitting the lock button on the fob. Oh, and it has an immobilizer that will literally not allow me to start the car unless I use the fob to unlock it. Not manually unlock, not use the switch on the door panel to unlock. No, only the fob. I'm fob locked. I'm not foobar, I'm faux-bar. If anything ever happens to this fob, my car will become functionally unusable to me. So I guess buying and programming another one of these things is the next move, unless it'd just be cheaper to get underneath or to try to figure out how to disable it all. But then I have the mechanical savvy of somebody born yesterday afternoon, and not even born on purpose, but like one of those births where the mother is scheduled to go in on a certain date for a C-section, but then her water breaks, and it's like, well, hope you didn't start doing Kegels yet. Brian was able to get the alarm to stop flipping out at least, so that's been a load off. And it allows me to truly appreciate just how exquisitely made this car is in stock form. And now I get to enjoy growing into a car that is as much a group effort of the collective social conscious as it was an effort by Toyota. What do I mean by that? Well, break out your books and turn to reception theory. Yeah, I'm doing literary theory again. Oh my god, don't close out the video. It makes sense, I promise. Okay, so reception theory was developed by German literary critic Hans Robert Jauss in the 1970s, and focused not just on how the meaning of a work of art is influenced by the cultural, historical, and life experiences of the people who first received that work of art, but by successive generations whose own cultural, historical, and life experiences shape their understanding. Someone who reads Brave New World in 2023 might not have the same interpretation as someone who read it in 1932, because the world of the modern reader is very different from the one inhabited by the person who read that book when it came out. Someone reading that book today has the benefit of decades upon decades of scholarship written about the book to inform their understanding of that work. Or maybe they saw a movie version of it, and it interpreted the story in a new way that ended up changing the reader's perception of its themes. Maybe you agree with how past generations interpreted a work. Maybe you reject it outright because your life experiences bring you to a different conclusion of what that work means. In short, art becomes an accumulation of interpretations that build on generation after generation of readership, response, discussion, reinvention, the past and the present interacting to form meaning. And the meaning is never fixed. It's always fluid because future generations may have a different interpretation entirely, motivated by, reinforced by, or in opposition to the readings that came before. So what does this have to do with the Camry? Well, I wouldn't say the Camry is the ultimate work of reception theory, but it's undoubtedly meaningful because its reputation forms the basis of its meaning throughout history. Introduced as Toyota's second world car after the Corolla, the Camry was sent to pick up the slack for the failing Corona in 1983, as the Honda Civic was giving them the type of quality ass whooping you only ever saw when a kid would make a yo mama joke to a classmate whose mother just died. So Toyota dropped this spry little piece of future savings and kept the royal naming convention. Camry was a derivation of the Japanese word kanmuri, meaning crown, just as Corona was crown in Spanish. And hey, I didn't have to look that up, so I guess my Spanish is better than I thought. No soy un mal puertorriqueño after all. Now, this is the fifth generation, the XV30, running on the Toyota K platform, which housed the Avalon, the Sienna, the Highlander, and the Lexus ES and RX models. Basically the Power Rangers of people who start their taxes January 1st. Amazing, responsible people, living responsible lives, liberated from the anxieties of the perennially unprepared. Maybe a Camry isn't hot stuff, but hot damn, is it gonna get the job done. And hey, let's not sell the Camry short on its appeal because it has it. It does have appeal. It's just not the kind of appeal that you think a car should maybe have that would be considered appealing. But it's all part of going down the reception theory rabbit hole. Because upon its debut in 1983, the Camry was the superior Accord, because the Camry was tailored to American interests in ways the Accord wasn't. It had a more powerful engine than the Accord. It had more space for American families. It had more headroom for taller drivers. In some ways, it prioritized comfort over straight-line performance. It was reliable, dependable, but most of all, it was great on gas. At a period in history when the memory of the oil crisis and rising gas prices were fresh in the minds of consumers everywhere, the Camry was a popular choice. And yet, even as it grew in popularity over time, culminating with overtaking the Ford Taurus as America's favorite family sedan, and eventually becoming one of the best-selling cars of all time, the success came at the cost of its mass appeal. Because to be a successful family car, you can't really be cool. And as times changed and we got farther away from gas crises, SUVs started to crowd the family marketplace, and young drivers just found the Camry to be a boring relic of their earlier youth and its frequent social life impacting trips to Sears to try on pants for the wedding of some cousin they've never even met. It became hard to pretend that the Camry was appealing. The Camry simply couldn't mean to Gen Xers what it meant to the baby boomers who raised them. Different times, different experiences. But today, In a post-cash for clunkers world, where gas prices are high and affordable used cars are rarer than a steak that hasn't left the slaughterhouse yet, the Camry might as well be a new Countach. And there have been literal decades of scholarship supporting not only the idea that Toyotas are reliable, but that the Camry in particular is the limousine of the proletariat. So that's going to influence how it's viewed today. But also the high gas prices and lack of decently priced used cars will lead to a Camry also being viewed differently than how it was in generations past, where needs maybe weren't as urgent as they've become. In a way, later generations are free from the responsibility of having to originate something's meaning, but in other ways, they get to refine it. And in this way, the Toyota Camry has been reimagined as the ultimate used car, the affordable, reliable GOAT, the dependable one for someone who doesn't want to sink endless resources into a car that will need to go back to the shop before the next paycheck hits. Reception theory shows us the varying attitudes towards the Camry, how it appealed to the first people who got to drive it, and how it created a horizon of expectations in generations that followed, all the way up to today, where the legacy of the Camry is informed not just by the current state of our world, but by the information and attitudes towards the Camry that have been passed down like great-grandma Borland's engagement ring. For me, personally, I've read all the articles and heard all the stories about how great Camrys are. Perhaps my initial disappointment was less about the car itself than about my own baggage. Maybe I'm so used to carrying the heavy burden of Mustang ownership that it's uncomfortable to feel so light. But as I drove the Camry more and more, I came to appreciate it for the elegant piece of machinery it is, and I hope it becomes that ideal partner I've been searching for in a car. Because for me at least, I think a Camry represents emotional growth, going from a self-interested Mustang driver to a responsible adult at the ripe old age of 38, holding on to the hope that us late bloomers will figure it all out in time. I feel like my burden has lightened, and I could get used to this. I could really grow to love this. In the silences and the somnambulant dream of functional efficiency, I could be happy. I could really be happy. Ain't that something?
GoPro, stop capture. Center position. So you can't, Dad, so you don't accidentally change the... Oh, these are not folding mirrors. Look at that.